Hello and welcome to The Decision Makers, the show where we really dig into what it takes to run a town. Today I'm here with Councillor Darryl Gerrard. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We like to start here at the very beginning. Not necessarily birth, you don't need to go back quite that far, but your background, what point of view you bring to the council.
Okay, so I guess my background that I bring, I'm in the way of Neepawa residents, I'm still relatively new. I've been here just over 20 years.
Okay.
I came here, like a lot of people, with getting a good job and an opportunity to kind of put down some roots. And my wife and I came, and I guess as we've evolved here, we bought into the community right from day one. And I guess my attitude, my perspective was and my background is that, I want to be active, I want to participate, and I want to be a part of, helping mold that community that I live in, and right from day one. So that's kind of a bit my background.
Okay.
And my belief. I've been active in some politics in the past, so different jobs in finance and sales. So yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's where you're sort of coming from. Was your education in finance or?
No, my education was in sales and marketing.
Sales and marketing. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
That fits well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you are actually one of the only councillors on council right now who has served before. This isn't your first term.
That's correct.
It's your second?
This is my second term. I came in a by-election.
Okay. Oh.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, when Jody Baker made the move into the administration side, obviously that becomes a conflict. So she gave up her seat, and it was interesting because that first council was 100% acclaimed until I came along, and then we had a 3-person runoff for that one seat. So it was great.
And then the next, of course, election, there were quite a few candidates who stepped up and.
Yeah, and I think that's in large part because our community is growing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Councils have been getting more active. The community's seeing more, and they want to be involved and be a part of this because it is so exciting. And I think if you get a well-functioning council, that usually leads into more people wanting to be on council.
Either well-functioning or very dysfunctional, probably, are the two things. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, in both councils, I felt that we've worked, as a group very well, and I've enjoyed it. And every council brings its own perspective as a group, and it's been fantastic with both.
So, what initially prompted you to run for council? Was it something you'd always wanted to do, or?
Well, I had an interest in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to running for council, I had actually sought another a position in politics, and then I realized that I needed to learn more at the grassroots level.
Mm-hmm.
Always been very passionate about being a decision maker in my community.
Yeah.
And I realized this is really where I needed to go, is to get to the council level and really get the good understanding of a working government. And and then as well, I just saw so much in Neepawa that when I came onto council, like I said, we're really kind of getting into that rapid growth stage. I thought this is I need to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So
help direct where that growth is going.
Yeah.
And so how much do you think is translatable from municipal politics? Where I think a lot of people think municipal politics are very different from politics on the provincial, national level. How much do you think is translatable in the duties and the?
Well, obviously, when you start talking any level of government, there's jurisdictions, and I think when you start talking municipal politics, I like to call that like frontline service in politics, because we are right there, and we are a part of day-to-day life continuously, right? And understanding, I guess, government process, when you start talking how you pass bylaws, laws, things like that, it's very relatable. As you move up, I guess, or I shouldn't say up, when you move into the different levels of government, some processes change. I think decisions can take longer. The bigger the organization, the longer it can take. The nice thing about being on council, we can react really quickly. But that being said, as a municipal council, we are very tightly regulated under provincial jurisdiction as to what a municipal council can do.
Okay, so what are then, if there's things that municipal council can't make decisions about, what sort of things are those?
Well, when we start taking a look at, provincial, kind of provincial jurisdiction, they set the bylaws on how, they set the laws and the governance on how we can operate.
Okay.
I think one of the prime examples when you look at a functioning council is that, you talk governments and you talk, you hear the words deficits, things like that.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist in municipal politics. Actually, every budget that we approve actually has to go to final stamp within the province for them to pass, right? When we start taking a look at setting things like utility rates, even though that we run and regulate utility, if we want to start applying for rate increases, that has to happen from a provincial level. So, the Traffic Act, how those things, we fall under provincial jurisdiction. So, as much as councils can go apart setting, property taxes to fund what we want to do, we can drive, recreation locally in that. There are a lot of things that our hands are bound under that how it operates.
Now, do you find when you're working on things such as changing rates, which require the provincial approval, do you find it's very much a rubber stamping process, or are they really coming back with, you can't do this, you can't do this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's when you start taking a look at, let's say something as simple as setting water and sewer rates. When we're doing those kind of applications, we're seeing those frontline costs, what it costs to maintain sewer, upgrade, aging water infrastructure. When we start going to set rates, we have to, there was a significant change that occurred within the province where we had to all of a sudden start factoring in depreciation on those things where that hadn't been done in the past, or we had seen municipalities had kind of funded some of the utilities through the general revenues in other areas, and that was all limited and controlled by the province. When we're starting to do applications for those rate increases, we have to justify every cost and then how we try to recapture that from ratepayers. Again, it requires their final approval. In one case, we saw some increases there that seemed quite steep, but in reality, we weren't able to raise the water and sewer rates for 5 years because we were waiting for it to meet the approval process of the Public Utility Board. So sometimes how that all flows through, we can't do sometimes those small gradual steps because we have to go through that process. So, those are just some of those interactions that we have within the province.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting relationship. And do you find that relationships with other municipalities, they are treated equally, let's say?
Oh, absolutely. I 100% think so. And when you just start talking those boards, the province, it's always in their interest to make sure that it's a very fair process, and then it works equally through the province to the best of their ability.
Right. And I know, for instance, municipal elections, they are on a set provincial schedule. Everyone does it at the same time.
Correct. Yes.
So that is, I guess, again, provincially regulated.
100%. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So just like pivoting sideways a little bit here. Again, when you started serving on council, were there any specific passion projects of yours, that I like to call them, things that you really wanted to accomplish in the town in your term on council, or in your terms on council? When I came onto council, I would have been probably like a lot of other councillors. I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this, whether it be, I'm going to fix every road in Neepawa the first year, or I'm going to, bring in these things. But then you very quickly realize the limitations of what we can do in terms of finances, how we can tax, how those monies are spent. So I guess when I came in,
thinking that it was just an easy reset, but there's a lot of things that are different. And as I actually got on council, started working on council, I think some of my passions actually evolved, because I think as a counselor, the first 2 years, you're literally in shell shock. It's just a learning process and understanding how this can function. So, when you get onto council and then you start to understand the meeting process, understanding how we manage finance reserves within the council and how those monies can't be just moved around easily from area to area. I think a person comes in with 2 years, you've got to be passionate about the community. You can't come in with one issue on mind, because if you're coming in because you've maybe got an axe to grind or you've just got one issue, you're probably not going to enjoy your time there, and probably a lot of the community, the ratepayers, aren't going to get their best value out of you as a counselor as well. So I think you've got to come in with a really, just passionate about your community as a start.
So saying that, do you enjoy your time on council?
I have learned so much. Just the understanding what it takes to start doing subdivisions for new developments,
which we have many.
Yes, and that process. You wonder how can we make this happen faster. At times it feels like you're pushing a rope, but again, again, understanding that process so that you can maybe help developers who want to come to the community. And we can start laying out, successful roadmaps for them so we can improve that, because it's exciting, and I know the community loves when we see that kind of progress happening. There's just so much on that side.
So everyone else I've talked to so far I've been able to talk about their learning and growth on starting on council. I'd love to ask you what the transition was like from one council to the next. What's that process like? It's I guess it's, how would I best put it? I would almost want to say it was seamless. It really was, because when the I guess the room kind of reset 3 years ago, two of us came back as counselors. We got a bunch of counselors that came in, and again, kind of wide-eyed and just to learn the process and understand how it's going to work. So generally they come in with a lot of questions, and it was kind of odd being a 3-year veteran and being able to use the word veteran, but the previous council was so good to me and taking me under their wing. I think I just wanted to make sure we made that process as easy for them as possible as well. And like I said, some different views and some views evolved, but I think they kind of evolved with how the community evolved, and it was just fantastic to be a part of both. So you went very quickly from the newbie to the mentor in this kind of transition here.
In 3 years, and it's been fantastic.
So what is your day-to-day like on the council? What are your duties? Like, what kind of time commitment do you have to put in?
Well, that's a great question, because I think a lot of people see council meeting hit. It happens every second Tuesday, right? The first and the third Tuesday of every month. There are a lot of other commitments involved. I guess, once you become a council member, you automatically start seeing some other subcommittees that come in under your areas. So. Because I was on finance and human resources, public safety, all of a sudden I started picking up roles on the Neepawa Veterinary Board. So then I sit also on the County Courthouse Board. I also spend some time with White Mud Watershed. So there's a host of different other issues that come along. Typically, with my role on finance, I'm typically in the office, besides every council meeting, I'm generally in every once a week beyond that, or every second week, whether it be signing checks, because that does come under that role and responsibility to just kind of review cash outflows and things like that. And so, if you're a council member or someone who's eyeing up running for council, and I hope there's lots of people who are considering it again, because we're only a year away.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? I would tell a person in the back of your mind, think 1.5 meetings a week. That's kind of how you budget.
Yeah.
So even though you see that half hour, 45-minute session every 2 weeks,
that's the tip of the iceberg.
It really is. Yeah, you really see the tip of the iceberg of how it works. And if you decide you get passionate about some other subcommittees and things like that, you can start to find a lot more place to spend time as well.
Yeah. Now, and outside of meetings and time in the office, how much sort of on the ground work do you do? Like people coming up to you, asking questions, bringing issues?
Oh, that's nonstop.
That's work time too, right?
And it never bothers me. I joked one night with my wife and I. We were out, kind of walking a neighborhood and walking the dogs, and I had 3 different ratepayers come up and question me on things, and no problem. I'm probably the most approachable guy you'll ever meet. And I'm glad to answer questions where I can and what I can, and if I can take issues back, to share with council and administration, I live and love that. I mean, that's the fun part of this. So.
That's nice, and I know, having been to some of the council meetings now, or several council meetings now, there are some times when you're talking about an issue like, I have to visualize this, we need to see this, especially dealing with a lot of the developments and things like that.
Correct,
so there's,
yes. Yeah.
I would think some time put in literally going places.
Kind of a guilty little one that I've done over the summer is, for the last few months, every Sunday morning I get on my bike and I bike through different neighborhoods, just kind of seeing what's happening, what's going on, out to the bike park, you name it. I'm not out, just to kind of see what's happening around the community. I've, taken now the last 2 months, I go through the cemetery every Sunday morning on the bike, just to see what's the progress and what's happening out there. So I just had, a couple weeks ago, a good talk with Blake and Brian about the cemetery there and seeing the progress there. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, absolutely.
Well, let's sort of start to dig in a little bit onto your different committees and committee work.
Sure.
Starting with finance.
Yes.
Because that's a biggie, and that's one that no one else has kind of talked about me with, or talked to me about.
Well, finance is one I've really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I took the last year of the previous council is when they moved me into finance. And I kind of got to see how the cash flow starts to work a little better. You understand that. And you start to see the bills and the expenses and how that flows. The other one too is I really like to be involved in the budget process. Administration, Neepawa is a very fortunate community with the administration we have.
They're amazing.
They are absolutely amazing. We can take it right from our CAO and the entire team and how they work together cohesively. They make council look really smart. They really do. They really, even when you're calling us goofy, they've done a lot of prep work to get us to the stage we're at. So, to work with that and to see how that budget starts to evolve, then us as a council, we get to start kind of putting our fingers on it, saying, okay, if we're starting to talk about the spend, what are our inflation rates looking like? What is, no one ever has an appetite for paying more in taxes.
No,
but we understand that, those costs go up. There's an expectation of services. And, it's about trying to mold and move those monies around as best we can to reflect the attitudes of the residents, really. And that's why I love finance, because when we start talking finance, as you start working with rec projects, we can see how the monies are available in some of our reserve funds. Whether we're talking the grants, as we see the requests start to come in from the different organizations here, and how we can manage that. Finance, I feel like I get to kind of put my finger on a bigger level through all the departments, and I love that.
Yeah.
And what's nice is that it's also kind of in the background, so you get to kind of see and consider and ponder, and then obviously that committee is always open. If we have a committee meeting, all the other councillors are entitled to come in and sit down and be a part of it. I just chair the finance committee.
So I have to imagine there are a lot of moving parts in that because of all of the different departments, and that all comes into one budget.
Correct. And that process really, when you see that the final budget has to be submitted to the province for their approval before May 15th every year, and there's, we have to do a first reading and we have to do a second and third reading before we can even pass on. So we know our budget typically has to be done by the middle of April. The first reading is by the middle of April, and so that we can kind of make that flow for the province. We really start talking budget. It'll be coming in November, December.
Yeah.
So, and we'll start working at that now, start seeing the requests from the departments and what the wants are. And then we have to start seeing what that looks like. And then we'll say, okay, based on the spend and what our new revenue resources are from, the expansion.
Yeah.
Those are all the challenges we have to try to manage.
Right. So now those departments are right now planning their budgets to be able to submit them to.
Starting. So everyone's starting to think about it. When you start taking a look at a construction season for roads, I can guarantee you that group is already starting to think about, okay, this is kind of what we need to do. This is where we have to start working.
Yeah.
That process starts long before it ever gets in front of the camera.
And getting those priorities in line and that kind of stuff.
And then it's a few meetings before that, as a council, in camera, so that way, we can debate and talk those issues through. So
that's a lot. I know from having been in a previous life on the other side of, and still in some capacities on the other side of the granting process, those are due the end of December, I know. So that's kind of, again, that has to get in before you can look at it, before you can make a budget, before it can go to the province to.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. It's not playing checkers, it's playing chess. We're thinking many moves ahead.
Probably into, okay, if we do this year, 5-year plan, all that kind of stuff as well.
100%. Yeah.
And you sort of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but I think some people come in and say, well, you spent X amount of dollars on this recreation project, why wasn't that spent on, roads or something? And those are different pots of money. That's
correct. So when we set our budgets, we have monies that flow to those different departments, and once those monies are in those reserves, they can't be flowed out to other areas. Like if that money is in a recreation reserve, that is designated, and we have to spend those monies in recreation. So if we had money set aside in an area, we couldn't just say, what, too bad for that area, we're going to rob it all and we're going to move it to this area, because I think that's a good protection and a good fail-safe, because then it makes sure that all those areas are being represented. Because you get, if you had one council that put zero value, in, let's say, I'm not going to say they would, but an example of recreation. So if we said, that's, if you want recreation, you go pay for it yourself. Well, that would be fine for them to say, but there's a lot of things that have to happen there. That's those funds that go for the Yellowhead Center. It's funds that go to Arts Forward. It's how we can make sure that, by having, basketball courts, tennis courts, pool, things like that, because that speaks, number one, to quality of life within the community. It also speaks to, a lot of times, reducing vandalism, things like that. There's social benefits to that as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So, when those monies start going into those reserves, they're a great protection to ensure that, those monies are spent there. Or we couldn't raid the road budget one year because we wanted to build a new rink, right? I mean, that's why those monies flow that way.
Yeah, and that's, again, I think, and I'm assuming this, I guess, once you set the budget and it's approved by the province, that's your budget. Those are your pools of money.
That's where it is, yeah.
And you're accountable.
That's right.
On several levels, I guess, to that.
And how those monies flow out, we have to be able to account and explain that.
Yeah.
So,
So are there any now underneath finance or any other subcommittees under that you flow onto, or is that?
because I'm on finance, I would sit on Sayward. Now that's a, that one in particular. That was some money that was set aside, the Sayward Estates, and that's monies that are managed by the Beautiful Plains Community Foundation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then we basically sit there to make and give our approval as to how those monies get spent for some projects around the hospital.
Okay.
And
yeah.
also some money that go for the personal care home and things like that too, because that's
Okay.
what the Sayward Estates was for.
Right.
So if you're on finance, you're going to be on Sayward Estates.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you've said that, because I meant to ask that before. Is what is Sayward Estates? What is?
Yeah. So it was a
Yeah.
benefactor who put a large sum of money, and it's managed by the foundation. And every year, those monies are paid out of the foundation. The interest earned on those investments, and then
Allocated to, I guess, various healthcare.
that's right.
Type
And that's
yeah.
I mean that's 100. We let that be 100% driven by the healthcare professionals
Yeah.
that are here within the community. Essentially, we're just here to make sure that it's following the rules and the guidelines of how that money has to be spent. So
Okay. And then the next committee, I think you mentioned, was public safety. Is that?
public safety. So
Okay.
that's interesting because we've had a lot on the go there on public safety. New fire hall, right?
Yeah.
Purchasing the second fire truck since I've been on council. Just started that process. Previous to that, there hadn't been a truck updated in, it was 15 years, I believe, and our fleet was really starting to show its wear and tear. So it's nice to see some updates there. And then obviously we've got the new RCMP build within the community.
Right.
And
That's going up fast now.
that's moving, yes, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
That new build, I'm hoping we can continue to see this as a hub, and to have the RCMP here, as a part of the long-term future of Neepawa, which is fantastic. So,
I mean, because Neepawa again is seeing the kind of growth where we are really a regional hub.
we are
Right here,
and we're that anchor status is establishing more and more every day, I believe.
Yeah.
And
seeing it.
if the residents and councils and that keep reinvesting in that, we're going to make sure that happens.
Yeah.